Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Cover One Buffalo podcast. I am here tonight, Aaron Quinn, with my handsome co-host Greg Thompson. How you doing, Greg? I see you have a new sweater on this evening,
I
a different one.
I didn't want to let anyone down. It is sweater season. Wanted to roll out something new, and I'm joining you here from the lovely Hampton Inn in Wilkesboro, North Carolina. New glorious places around the world.
Awesome. Good to know that your house does not look like a hotel. That's a positive thing, and good to know that you're a Gryffindor fan over there. So, so we got some cool stuff to get into here today. Before we get into it, obviously, welcome here to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. If you haven't been to cover1.net yet, I suggest you do that. If you're here for the first time checking us out, head over to cover1.net, check out all the content there. Right now is the time to get over there. The guys are working their butts off. The scouting reports are really starting to come out, firing off all over the place by Russell, Christian, really all those guys over there. So if you're interested in the draft and draft prospects, now's the time to head over to cover1.net, check it out, because right now they got Montez Sweat is up there. I'm looking at Greg Little, James Williams. So they got a little bit for everybody. Stills, all kinds of guys. Well, I'll screen share this in a little bit for you so you can see the amount of content that is coming out right now. So head over there, get on it. And while you're over there, check out the premium subscriptions. Right now, we're going to get into this a little bit because Greg did an interview this week, but Duke Williams from the CFL signed with the Buffalo Bills. A lot of people say they know a lot about this guy, but not a lot of people do. I don't know anyone that has their hands on CFL film. Eric was able to get a bunch of CFL all 22 film. I don't know, some underground black market exchange that.
If there's an underground black market for all 22 film, Eric is in it.
Eric's in it.
Yeah.
He is. And so if you were a premium member already today, right when we were getting ready to go live, he was sharing some of the Duke Williams clips in the premium Slack channel under our film channel there. So a benefit to the Slack channel. And Greg, I know you're a huge fan and a premium member yourself. Tell us kind of the benefits of that.
It's awesome. And again, my favorite is the premium chat. You have guys in our chat here in the show tonight that are from the premium channel, and just being able to go back and forth. Today we gave out life advice. It was great. But no, it's a great community of people who, love to kind of keep everybody updated on, hey, I saw this on Twitter, I was hearing this over here, I read this on Reddit. Wherever people were getting their information from, it kind of all comes together, and we all kick it around as a group of people who are really dedicated and focused on, the future of the franchise and the direction it's going and everything that's there. And then going into the film is really, I talked about it before, but for someone who consider themselves a football expert per se, and some of them a fanatic about it and really invested in it, I can't believe how much I've learned being able to break down film and watch everything. Eric literally does kind of a tutorial and kind of takes us through a kind of a basic version of the scouting academy and what he's taken people through, and obviously not nearly to that detail, but being able to understand different coverages, different blocking schemes, understanding what the route combinations are. It just really helps you have a more informed experience and be able to go through and show everything. And I love it. And like Aaron said, it's really crazy that, I'm trying to jump on the guy who broke the story for the Duke Williams signing, and already today he's got all 22 film in there, breaking it down, showing what the capabilities are and what's going to translate. So it's just an awesome experience. I can't try to talk it up enough. And for $25, it's just a ridiculous value compared to what so many other things charge on a monthly basis, or, for just an individual draft guide or whatever it is. You get everything. You get the whole package of everything there. And it's really fantastic. So I can't talk it up enough.
Yeah, no, the deal's great. I will probably spend much more than $25 just on draft guides, preseason guides. I do the same things, free agency guides. So, and all the other subscriptions I have, PFF, all those different things. I end up spending way more money, and I get the most out of the premium membership here with Cover One. And the Slack channel is really probably the spot that I get the most out of it. So definitely come join us over there. It's a lot of fun. I can tell that the people here have fun in the YouTube chat. If you're listening to the podcast, make sure that you follow us over on YouTube, because we do go live and there is a chat there, and that's also a fun experience. And seeing the chat as we're live talking about the show, people can ask their questions, have their own side conversations, and that's really a fun time too, kind of similar to the Slack in that sense. So we'll get right into the show here, because I do want to talk about it. I haven't unfortunately, with a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old now, I haven't had a chance to listen to the premium podcast, the interview that you did the other night. I do want to listen to it. I tried a couple times and people were screaming in my house. And so I haven't gotten to listen to it yet. So why don't you tell us kind of who the gentleman is that you interviewed, and without giving away too much, kind of what you got out of that interview about Duke Williams?
Yeah, it's really fantastic. And again, another benefit of the premium membership, and something that went out to those guys first to be able to check everything out here. But Farhan Lalji is a anchor and reporter for TSN, which is the sports network up in Canada and kind of their equivalent to ESPN. He is an expert on the CFL and everything that's there, and he broke the story on the Duke Williams signing with the Bills. So I, reach out to him on Twitter, kind of the way I do most any interview that we set up. And it was awesome. He set up a lot of time for us, gave us an opportunity to be able to kind of talk through and understand where things are headed from a opportunity standpoint, a little bit about his journey. I mean, everybody saw some of the stories that came out and what's there for, the challenges that he had and why he ended up having to go that route. But more so on what was reported from the coaches of the Edmonton Eskimos, which is that they couldn't say a bad thing about him, that he was an awesome teammate, very dedicated, great work ethic, showed up every day with a great attitude and really earned his way there. And then in the first year, he had a little bit of challenge, but I'll just walk through a little bit. Anyone who didn't see the story, as a guy who came out as one of the top 5 recruits in the country, had some challenges, wasn't eligible, ended up going through a junior college route, was the top junior college player coming out, got a shot at Auburn, made a little bit of hay there, and then all of a sudden got into a fight with teammates, a former teammate and some other guys at a bar, got kicked out there, got kicked out of school. Ended up, that was right before he went to the scouting combine, ended up having an incredibly poor scouting combine that may or may not be representative of his challenges, and ended up then getting signed as an undrafted free agent with the Rams. Tried to hang on there, had a little bit of success, and then ended up being in the very final cut down before the roster and didn't get brought back on as the practice squad. So at that point, he ended up going up north to Edmonton, signed with the Edmonton Eskimos in the CFL. The first year there, he did all right, was a starter, had maybe 600 or 800 yards, and did reasonably well. But then in the second year, really blew up. And that's where he got into 88 catches, 1,500 yards, 11 touchdowns. Some of the stats in the CFL are high, so they do pass a lot. But and still,
more games.
Yeah, more 18 games, wide open field, wider field. But still, he was an all-pro for them and was an all-star and was the top receiver in the league, led the league overall. And again, the most important part was all of the coaches, everyone around him spoke highly to his character, his work ethic, everything he had put in there. So I think the humbling process of not getting drafted when he absolutely was a higher round talent, and then not even making a roster, I think it was the wake-up call that he needed. And I think we need to temper some expectations of what kind of player we're getting and whether that's going to be some kind of, amazing, underdog story or not. But I think he's got a shot to be able to make the roster. I think he picked the Bills roster for a reason, because we're obviously not very deep at wide receiver. And he's going to have to earn his way with some involvement on special teams and being able to, make that high point catch area. But I think he's got a shot. And I'll let you talk a little bit about a conversation you and I had with Eric about maybe what role we might see with him here in the future.
Yeah, and right before we get into that, just a couple thoughts. I read all those stories they were discussing, and the path to the NFL is not always a clean one for a lot of these prospects. And if anyone's had a chance to watch that Last Chance U on Netflix, that's a great example that the path into college is not always clean, and it does a lot of covering of the JUCO kids, and then you come and see these kids performing at SEC schools and big schools and stuff, and they are good football players, and the mold doesn't work for every single guy. So you got to give guys some leniency there. The thing that I like about him is going up to the CFL. I do unfortunately get bored and watch some CFL games. I won't say that I follow the CFL exclusively or anything like that, but I've always thought that more of these guys that don't quite make it are trying to find their spot in the league I've said it a number of times when guys are trying to get back into the league, go to the CFL for a year. I know the contracts are tough and overlap sometimes, but if you go and do a 1-2 year deal and put something on film, because guys are watching, and this is a prime example. There was multiple teams offering him a contract. This wasn't just the Buffalo Bills saying, "Hey, we're close to Canada and we found a guy that plays right." over the border. This is everybody's watching for anywhere where they can gain competitive advantage. So good for him. It's not ideal that CFL doesn't pay fantastic, and you could get stuck there the rest of your career if nobody comes calling. So good on him to take the chance on himself, go to the CFL and do that. And you mentioned it in the Slack channel that he seems to have. I think a lot of people get hung up when McDermott talks about getting the right guys and the right DNA, and I think people interpret that as. We've heard a lot about people interpreting that as people that are religious or people that are just high character choir boy type roles. And I don't think that's what he means at all. I think that it doesn't matter what your background is or what trouble that you may have been in. He wants guys that are going to show up with a chip on their shoulder and play their heart out for their teammate. And I think that's what the DNA is. And it seems like maybe this might be that type of fit for them going forward. But as to the fit, Eric brought up a great point about that kind of H-back, move around, tight end role. And that I know that we're thin at wide receiver and people want that number one big body receiver and for Josh Allen. I don't know that this guy's got that ability. You kind of touched on it. Stats in the CFL are like, I had that argument with a few people on Twitter that, well, he had X amount of yards in the CFL. That's not going to translate over to the NFL and NFL defensive backs, right? But he could be a productive role in some type of slot, moving him around in the backfield, H-back role with that big body, big frame. I'm not really sure where he's weighing in yet. Have you seen anything or when you talked with the ESPN guy, did you get the sense that he could fit that role?
Now, Farhan did think that was a realistic role, and I think to level set for people, it's when you say move tight end or H-back, people think of, that we're talking about like an inline, hand in the dirt, 3-point stance tight end. That's not what we're talking about. I try to translate it more to maybe what we thought Anquan Boldin was going to be. It's more of that guy, Duke Williams is coming in. He's 6'3", 230. He's not incredibly fast. Now, I don't think the combine numbers are a true reflection. I think he went in out of shape and had kind of been pouting about getting kicked off the team. So I don't think that's an absolute reflection, but he's not an explosive athlete. He is a strong player. He high points the ball incredibly well. So we thought, and where the conversation went with Farhan, and again, I encourage you guys to listen to that interview, we were talking more about his ability to then go against linebackers, safeties, and nickel cornerbacks, where more of his strength and size and frame and ability to high point are more powerful, rather than trying to go against your outside Patrick Petersons, Jalen Ramsey's, your outside corners, that their athleticism and quickness might be able to get to the ball before he can use that. So I think that it's unrealistic to expect him to be at that explosive level of an outside receiver, but I do think he can have a role. So it's, again, I think that there's a chance. And the way I translated it before was, last year at this time, you're talking about the kind of player that signed a futures contract at receiver was your Malachi Dupree and your Kalen Clay. This guy is where their upside was, best case scenario, a 6 receiver and special teams at best. I'm not saying that I think that all of a sudden Duke Williams is going to be more than that, but I think there's at least a chance. There's a non-zero chance that he is more than that and could translate into something. And if you watch his highlight route, I mean, there's some impressive catches that guys like that weren't making anytime in their career. So he is going to have to contribute on special teams. He is going to have to carve out a role that's more realistically 4th or 5th receiver. But there's a non-zero chance that he could pan out to be something more. And even if that's a low chance, it's at least worth a shot. And I know that's something you really touched on, was what that means about the scouting group and the front office for the Bills. And that's encouraging.
Yeah, and you love a non-zero chance you'll take a chance on that. But I agree with you, and I think that maybe right when the signing happened and people rushed to YouTube and saw some of the highlights, I think that we got a little bit overexcited. It happens a lot for us as a fan base. We're just so hoping for success. I think that we look to guys like Brendan Riley. You saw him get a lot of hype from his highlight reels and some of the things he was able to do in preseason. And now he is not in the league. So I think that we overhype hoping that guys will pan out. I think that maybe pump the brakes a little on that type of hype, that if he does pan out to be a second option as receiver, that's a huge victory for this organization and that scouting department. But the worst case scenario to me is that he still is a guy that can stick on the roster and be a contributor in some way, shape, or form, whether that's being the third tight end or being the fourth, fifth option at wide receiver, or even if he comes in on a practice squad guy and he fills in when injuries occur throughout the year. Like, those things do matter, and filling out your roster in January and getting a guy that can do that in October is a fantastic thing that your scouting department's been able to do. So let's talk about that a little bit, because I had a ton of heated conversations right around draft time. Specifically on draft night, you saw round after round go. The Bills take Taron Johnson. People start losing their mind. Why haven't they gone receiver? Sarah Neal, what is going on? Why aren't we taking a wide receiver? And then we take the wrong wide receivers, the wrong kind of guys, and Ray McLeod and Prohl. So I was saying at the time, I was like, guys, wait a little bit. Like, there is ways to acquire talent that isn't just the draft. Or obviously free agency didn't pan out because receivers were just getting gobbled up for huge contracts that Bean was not interested in. I think he targeted some of those receivers. We know he targeted John Brown, but the value wasn't there, and he's not going to overpay. So I think the same thing was true for the draft. They had their grades on guys, and they weren't going to overvalue a guy like Equanimus St. Brown and overdraft him when they liked Taron Johnson for their scheme fit. It's just not how this team's going to operate. There's other ways to acquire talent. We saw it with undrafted free agency this year. Probably the best receiver on the team was an undrafted free agent this season. Yeah. Get him in, build him up. And now we're seeing this, in which you don't see a lot of January moves. I think Eddie Yarbrough during the Whaley years was a January move that ended up contributing, but you don't see a ton of them. But the fact that they are willing to scour every type of football league and make moves at every point in the season to improve the roster, even if it's the 53rd guy that's going to be on the roster or just another camp body to come and compete with that 53rd guy, I think is a credit to the organization. I think that fans should be happy that they're, everyone hated that term with Whaley of turning over every stone, but they're doing that and they're showing that, and that desire to bring in competition, I think, should be applauded by fans.
No, absolutely. I think that it's healthy. And I think that, don't underestimate the fact that Duke Williams had 5 or 6 offers from other teams. So there was some level of recruitment there to be able to do that. Obviously, they didn't commit anything to him. But he's another example, just like Robert Foster. And I actually used Robert Foster's path as an analogy for Duke Williams, a guy that was a top recruit coming out, got into Alabama, got hurt, didn't put up the numbers that he wanted, ended up going out, didn't even get drafted, made a roster and then got cut and then had to come back. There was a lot of, challenges along the way there that I think he's going to have some correlation and be able to kind of, connect with Duke Williams of the challenges they've had. But both of them have a huge advantage where we're looking at the contracts that they have, that we now have an exclusive rights free agency with Robert Foster and his control going forward. And we already have a 2-year deal with Duke Williams. If things pan out, that's a really, really cheap player. He's actually the lowest cap hold on our entire roster right now of what's there, because he only counts 495,000. It's actually below where most of the other players are. That's a huge value if he turns out to even make the roster. That's just free money that we're getting to have that at that point. Not only that, but then again the next year at a very, very minimum contract. So just any opportunity to do that is a benefit.
No, so as you were saying that, question came to mind, and it's just a little bit speculation, which I don't love to start speculating, except for in the Slack channel. I like to get everyone going a little bit. But speculation, so you're paying him low money. Obviously, Robert Foster's an undrafted free agent. Zay Jones is probably the biggest contract in the wide receiver room, coming into his 3rd season of his rookie deal. Isaiah McKenzie, also not on a big deal. A lot of young guys here. We got rid of the vets that were in the room. Your Andre Holmes, obviously your Kelvin Benjamin wasn't a great vet, but you know what I mean. He was there as a veteran leadership role in that room. Does this building of a young core like this, we're all assuming they're going to draft at least a guy in the draft for the wide receiver room as well, if not multiple guys to fill out this room. Does this give them a little flexibility to maybe place a higher value on a veteran wide receiver or spend maybe a little bit more? And I know Bean places his values and doesn't like to come off those values, but does this type of positional flexibility give them the ability to say, hey, we can spend a little bit more to get in a really good veteran leader to help push these guys' careers in the right path? Or do they just stay the course and say, hey, we're going young no matter what, and we're sticking to our values no matter what?
I think it's a great point, and I think that the difference is going to be the time frame versus the money. So right now, the Bills have by far the least money in the entire NFL dedicated to wide receiver. The top cap charge is Zay Jones at $1.8 million. Yeah. Everyone else is below $1 million and well below at the $600,000. I think technically our next most expensive is Victor Bolden. So Victor Bolden, Isaiah McKenzie, all those guys are. And then everyone cheaper than that below there. So it's an incredibly low amount of money. So I don't expect them to throw a huge 5-year, $75 million deal at Golden Tate or maybe somebody big gets released. But I could see them sign, say, let's use Golden Tate as an example again. I don't know that he's the right fit, but he's a veteran and a name that everybody knows.
It's good. Yeah.
As an example, I could see them pay him 2 years, and this sounds crazy, but 2 years and $30 million at $15 million a year, but it's only in 2019 and 2020 before any of our other contracts come up. That may be the kind of deal that Golden Tate's interested in, because that's $30 million right up front, all in those 2 years, and then a chance for another contract. I
give him a sexy bonus.
Yeah. Hey, we'll guarantee you all $30 million right here for the 2 years, and you can come in and do that. And then all of a sudden, that's before any of the Tre'Davious White, Matt Milano, Zay Jones, Deion Dawkins money is due. And then that comes off the bill then. So I do think that we're going to see some 1 and 2 year big money deals that don't lock us down like a Marcel Darius contract or like some of those other things we've struggled to get out of. But I could see that thrown around. So I do think that we are definitely going to see some receivers brought in. If it's a longer term deal, I'd see it more towards like an Adam Humphries from Tampa Bay, that we would see someone like that who's 25 getting a longer term deal. But I think there's a possibility that we get that in early to be able to do that. And I know Eyeball Billy and some others have asked about some of the other guys that are there. Robert Foster is a good example where we actually have so much control over him that
they don't have to sign him anytime.
Yeah, like the term exclusive rights free agent, I don't think a lot of people understand. It means that their only choice is to re-sign with the Bills or not be allowed to play in the NFL. So if you sign as an undrafted free agent, or again, flip it around the other way, if the Bills discover a player as an undrafted free agent, which we did with Levi Wallace and Robert Foster, it is an enormous value where you don't have to give any other deal other than, hey, you can play for the minimum or you can't play for any other team, and they can't even negotiate with you. So we have Robert Foster and Levi Wallace for 3 years on a minimum deal, and at that point, you can then look to re-sign him. And I would hope so. That'd be a great problem to have if they're looking for attention.
I mean, that's Eddie Yarbo has been on exclusive rights, and there's no reason to not bring this guy back. He contributes and he helps, and it's
dirt cheap.
Yeah. I mean, you fill your roster with a guy like that. That is gold to NFL front offices. So yeah, I think that flexibility we might see. I know a lot of people aren't looking at and saying they're going to get any splashes or anything like that, but I would think knowing McDermott and even Dable that they would want some type of veteran leadership in that room with these guys to help bring them along and help some of them take that next step, or just to keep them on the straight, like a guy that maybe has had some issues in the past that needs, hey, this is how we do things in the NFL, and this is how you need to do things, and this is how you beat quarterbacks on the field, and this is how you take care of yourself off the field. I think that we see the contract with Starr, and people are so upset with that and want to argue with that, and they have been willing to pay for not just the on the field, but pay for the leadership in the locker room. And McDermott's been preaching that since the day he walked through the doors of doing things right before you get to Sunday. And that's how you really build a winning team. So I could see them, bringing in a guy that maybe people aren't thinking about, that's a little older and for a little bit more money and surprising people. So interesting way to build that room. couple other big time deals happened since we last talked here. We had, but I do think they're not big time deals, but I think that it's really nice. They matter, and I think that it's really nice to not have to worry about this position at all, at least for 2019, and then we can readdress it next year at this time. But Barkley and Anderson both sign in deals, get extended. The quarterback room doesn't change at all for 2019, at least for now. There is some speculation about coaching, which we'll get into later, but at least for now, that whole core room is together. Allen referenced it in a number of interviews, saying how important his second half of the season success was to having those guys in the room with him. You got to look at the numbers a little bit more. Tell us what you think about the deals themselves and then what they mean to the team.
Two huge things that I genuinely love about this deal. So again, the Bills are going to pay quarterbacks the least amount of money in the entire NFL. They are going to have the least amount of money dedicated to that, which I would say on the receiver side is more of an indication of the lack of top end talent that we have and more crossing our fingers that things pan out. On the quarterback side, this is amazing. And this is the window that people talk about when you have a team in that rookie quarterback contract window, what it provides to you. We've now doubled down on that and ended up signing Matt Barkley to a 2-year, roughly $4 million deal. It's $1.8 million in the first year, $2.05 million in the second year, which is well below average for a backup quarterback. Average backup quarterback is more $4 to $6 million, with many of them at the $8 to $10 million range when you get into your Ryan Fitzpatrick's, or probably what the Tyrod Taylor is going to expect this coming. So the fact that we did that, and then also Derek Anderson at a minimum contract, that means that we're going to have Josh Allen on his rookie deal, which is 4.8 because he was a top 10 pick. Then super cheap with Matt Barkley at 1.7 million, and Derek Anderson, I think he counts as a minimum deal, but we actually pay him a little over $1 million because he's like 64 years old. But it's incredibly financially savvy to build your team that way, because that's very genuinely $30 or $40 million on some rosters of their quarterback room, and our quarterback room is going to be under $7 million total. So that's a ton of money that can go elsewhere. On the other side of that, the reason I'm so excited is you have 3 players in that room that all 3 of them have the number one priority of making Josh Allen the best quarterback he can be. That does not exist in, I'll say, most, if not all, quarterback rooms. Almost every quarterback room has multiple guys who accept their role but are waiting for their opportunity, looking for every chance they can get to make a name for themselves, and want that path forward for them to be a starter. And I won't be naive to think that Matt Barkley doesn't think somewhere in the back of his mind that's possible, but I think he, being out of football completely for a while, kind of confirmed that for him. The same thing with Derek Anderson. Both of them realized that's not their path forward, and being a good, supportive, contributing backup, helping there is his value. That
could make you a millionaire.
Yes, and literally, it's going to. Yeah, I think that Matt Barkley would be, he can be our Charlie Whitehurst. He can be our, who's the other Missouri quarterback that bounced around with the Saints and the Chiefs?
Oh, Chase Daniel.
Chase Daniel. Yeah. You can carve out a very nice life as a backup NFL quarterback.
Absolutely. You don't take any hits. You don't.
Yeah. Well, and you saw, I know the clip kind of went viral, but you saw how excited Matt Barkley was when, Josh Allen converted that 4th down conversion to lock up the game. You saw all those different things, that having a quarterback room that's a great value, that everyone knows their role and everyone is dedicated to the fact that my job is to make Josh as good as he can be. That is the best environment we can possibly ask for. And I think it speaks, volumes to what the front office has built, and the fact that we don't have to worry about that into 2019, and both Barkley and Allen are under contract in 2020 is fantastic.
Yeah, and also, obviously the development of Josh Allen is the number one priority of this organization. But with Matt Barkley specifically, I feel okay that if Allen, for some reason, needs a week with an injury or a couple weeks or whatever that is, that happens around the NFL. We saw Chase Daniel get some action this year. Mitch Trubisky went out. I think that Matt Barkley can at least come in and not lose you the game. And that's really what you need in a backup. You don't need a backup to come in and be Josh Allen. You need a backup to come in and just kind of keep the course and steady the ship. Obviously, he had the great game against the Jets. That is not who Matt Barkley is.
That's not what he's going to be every week.
Is that?
Oh, okay.
He's proven it over and over again. My brother's a Bears fan and saw some Matt Barkley experience, but that's okay. He can be just enough to kind of keep your team in the game and give your defense a chance to win the game or whatever it is. And that's what you need in backup. And we didn't have that going into this year. Obviously, Nate Peterman, we shouldn't even talk about him, but him being here as the backup wasn't a good solution. Obviously, that went on a little too long. Now I think we have a good solution that's not only cheap and good for Josh Allen, but also good in the horrible chance that we need him to play. I think that's a much better option than Derek Anderson being the backup that's going to play. Derek Anderson's not going to suit up unless Josh Allen is inactive for the Bills in 2019, I would assume. At that point, everyone gets so mad that they're carrying 3 quarterbacks, but we're not going to see Derek Anderson.
Yeah, he's going to be inactive every single week.
Yeah, I'm not worried about carrying the 3. It's the difference. The difference in Josh Allen's development is greater than.
You brought that up, though. On a serious note, if Josh Allen says, hey, Derek Anderson helps me and I need him here, that makes him worth it, period. Don't get me wrong, in the grand scheme of things, from a game theory standpoint and a strategy standpoint, would I prefer an extra defensive lineman for the rotation or an extra linebacker for special teams? Sure, I guess that's something, but you got to realize there's going to be 7 players every game day that are inactive, and that extra D lineman, extra linebacker is going to be one of those inactives. You're not taking away a contributing player on game day. And unless you get into a weird spot like we got into some of those weeks where we literally ran out of wide receivers or quarterbacks to play, unless you get into one of those weird situations, that third quarterback being on the 53 man just isn't going to impact anything going to be on game day.
No. And another point about this and kind of how the Bills have structured the cap and these contracts you talk about having one of the lowest or the lowest quarterback room in the league also allows to have better depth at some of the positions that you discussed, where you might not need 6 of those guys, but you have a good core of 5 of them and they're better. It allows you to spend a little bit more on offensive line or wherever you need, or the depth of the team. We keep talking about getting out of this dead cap jail that they were in this last season is going to give them the ability to fill out that 53 instead of having 20 something guys that are legitimately should be on an NFL field. They'll be able to have 40 something guys that should legitimately be on an NFL field. And so that in itself has value as well. So I see no downside to it. And like you said, we had Slack arguments about why is this guy inactive? Why don't we have this many cornerbacks and stuff? And if you get into an injury situation where you really need a 7th offensive lineman, it's probably not been a good game for you anyway. And then, it's not going to, that won't have made the difference. So I think they're good signings. But really what's going to be interesting to me now that things are starting to settle down around the league here, obviously we've seen most of the coaching vacancies around the league start to kind of settle out. We're hearing the rumors of who's remaining, who's left. Let's touch on the coaching vacancies a little bit. One thing that I think we both thought was a little interesting before we went on the pod, we were discussing while I was getting my hair ready. We were discussing.
People were shocked to see you with no hat on. It has been a shock. Your naked head has gained attention.
It's glowing right up here. So what's shocking to me is how it's such a weird coaching search year. Usually with coaching searches, you have like 1 or 2 candidates that hit every team. Everybody wants them and everybody gets a look at them. That hasn't happened this year. You haven't had that one guy that everybody wants their hands on. You've had just random guys getting jobs. But for Bills fans, one thing, I didn't think that they would get jobs, but we discussed on this show that we thought they would get interviews. We have not seen a single peep about Leslie Frazier or Brian Dable with all of the NFL jobs that opened up. Is that reflective of their performances, or what's going on there? Should we have any concern about why they're not getting anything? What's up?
I don't know if concern is the right term. I think it is an indication of their view as readiness in the market. Sad or not, I did expect Leslie Frazier as a respected former head coach to get what is sadly probably a token interview with the Rooney Rule. So I'm glad that didn't happen because I think that's terrible that those things occur. However, I did kind of expect Dable to get a sniff here or there, and I'll take that as a positive indicator. I thought he had a very underrated season. I'm happy that we have him, and if we get 2 more years out of him after this, that's great. So if he's not already lined up for some jobs and was kind of next in line and kind of the last remaining guy who didn't get it, which I think you could view maybe Kevin Stefanski or Brian Flores seem to be the guys who are going to be the last ones standing without a job. That they're kind of lined up as the top candidates for next year. I think that that's an interesting way to view what happened here. And my favorite part about seeing the musical chairs was every single job that was announced, I was like, oh, good. All right. I'm not afraid of that guy. I don't know that there were any coaches that were hired this offseason where I was really impressed or really concerned. I kind of like Chris Richard, and it sounds like he might get a job down in Miami, so I think maybe he's going to be a positive impact. He did a great job in Seattle, went down to Dallas, and now it sounds like he might be the guy in Miami. So I'd prefer that he doesn't go there. I'd rather they took a Brian Flores or a retread like Mike McCarthy or whoever. It sounds like Adam Gase and McCarthy might be there in Miami, or the other college coach that was being considered, Rule, I think is his name.
Yeah.
So there wasn't anybody there. Now, I know that a fair amount of guys, including I think Jason and a couple guys in the chat, were talking about it. Be careful to assume that nothing's going on at the position level. All the talk and reporting is always at the head coach and coordinator level. There's a ton of the lower level positional coaching interviews that are taking place. And I think that also the Bills have shown that they are very, very tight-lipped on everything. We're not getting any leaks, and any of the information we're finding out is coming from the agents of the guys. We found out about Juan Castillo and Terry Robisky because of them and their agents, not because of the organization. And that's why the Danny Crossman news came out later, even though there's a possibility all 3 of them were decided at the same time. I think that that's the same thing that's happening with the position coaches. I heard that the Atlanta offensive line coach interviewed. They just was a couple of new guys. The Tampa Bay line coach, Warhop. I know Eric's a fan of him. Everyone loves Bob Wiley, the set hut belly guy from Cleveland.
Right.
He was a very well respected guy. So there are new guys that have just come available literally today. So I think that it's appropriate to do your due diligence and be able to kind of walk your way through where those things are with a positional coach. And that I don't think not having a name announced yet is a bad thing.
No.
I'd say if we're at the end of next week and there's no announcement, okay, maybe now you waited too long. But I think that all the way through this week and beginning of next week is very standard.
Yeah, no, I don't think that there's a need to rush it either. You had mentioned a couple of the guys that just came free. So like everybody was saying, oh, well, all the head coaches are going to come and take these guys. But for every one of those that a head coach comes and takes, I think Kugler is one of the ones that people are really looking at because there was some report that the Bills had asked to interview him. For every one of those guys that a new coach hire comes and takes to build his staff, that's somebody else is coming into the market, because a lot of these teams were waiting on that to hire their staff and to see if any guys would be holdovers on those staff. So there is a lot of change at positional coaches throughout the league, obviously. And the Bills are really in a stable position where they only have to fill, the offensive line. Really, right? Is there anyone? Well, no. Offensive line, special teams coach, and wide receivers coach. But some of that could also be filled internally. And Eric was talking about that a little bit in the Slack. You have David Culley, who's currently the quarterback's coach, who has a history of being a wide receivers coach. I think who's the offensive assistant? What's it?
Thierry. I think that's how you say it.
Tierney or something.
Yeah, Tierney
is an offensive assistant, so he might be able to slide in and be an offensive line coach. You don't know what internally they're doing as well, in those conversations that they're having with these guys and and interviewing themselves. So you just don't know. I agree with you, Greg. In a week's time, if we come back here next week and we have no idea who these coaches are going to be, then you start to say, oh man, maybe they are missing out on some guys because they're taking too much time. I don't think they're there yet. I think plenty of guys are on the market, plenty of guys in-house that they can move around and keep that consistency for the offensive unit moving forward. And I think this is good for Dable. These are going to be some decisions that he didn't get to make last year that he's involved in moving forward this year to start to build, at least on the offensive side of the ball, for his positions. And then on special teams, I don't really care who you could bring in. Greg Thompson, for all I care. It's going to be better than Danny Crossman.
Number one criteria in the interview. Hello, good afternoon. Is your name Danny Crossman? Yeah, right. Oh, excellent. Well, welcome aboard. Welcome aboard.
Let's change out the nameplate on this door. You're good to go. So yeah, no, coaching vacancies, I'm interested to see what happens, but I don't think that it has a ton of sway on me. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you that I have the pulse of NFL offensive line coaches. That's not who I am. I don't have that. But you know who does is Eric Turner. And if you want to know the pulse on those things, you should definitely subscribe to the cover1.net premium subscription, because you get access to the Slack channel, you get access to Eric, you get access to all the good conversations that we're having in there. And some of that information we don't spread out on Twitter, where we're having conversations about offensive line coaches, about schemes, about fits. And Eric will post videos in the film channel that he just doesn't get around to putting out on Twitter. So if you follow Cover One on Twitter and you love the content we do, I really suggest that you head over and pop the $25 and become a premium subscriber, because not only is it great for you, but it really does help us to keep this content going. It helps keep the site up, all those things that we need to do to keep this site running for you guys and running at an optimal level and keeping that content flowing. So definitely go cover1.net, check out the premium content, and make sure you do that. Greg, we've got the phone app. Do you ever use that? You're traveling a lot. You're out and about, man of the road. Do you ever use the phone app, or tell the people where they can find the podcast too?
All the time. It's actually the best path to be able to do that, especially for premium members. Like we said, that interview with Farhan Lalji was sent out to the premium members first. You could get that in the premium channel Slack. You could get that on the website directly just for premium members. So definitely a great path to be able to do that. I use the app all the time for, the 4 up, 4 down that come from Fernando. I love the breakdowns. A lot of times I'm out traveling a lot, obviously here in this wonderful hotel room. So a lot of times I'm on Twitter and I'm looking at things like, oh, this guy declared for the draft. One of the first things I do is to go into the app and look at hey, did Russell and Christian and Jordan or Eric do a breakdown on him yet? And I can check out, oh, good. Oh, this guy's pretty good. That's cool. And it's awesome to be able to have a team like that you can talk about all the time. So I give them a hard time when the draft announcement comes. So I know one was Iowa State running back David Montgomery. That is a huge favorite of Eric and Russell and Jordan. So when it happened, it was the perfect the Michael Scott office. Oh, it's happening gif that's out there. So it's when stuff like that happens, it's exciting to know, because I've heard guys who are really informed talk about these players and really talk them up. And for a guy I'm 95% pro football, I watch the national championship game, I watch the big games here or there. So being able to kind of take a look at those guys and see the write-ups and then really now kind of switch gears into draft mode to understand what's out there. It's awesome. And I know Cliff in the chat here was talking about it's a perfect app for at work and when you're on breaks or at lunch. It really is. It's awesome to be able to just read one little draft breakdown, one little follow-up article. I can't advise it enough.
Yeah, and if you become a premium subscriber and you've never used Slack before, Slack has an app too, and I probably waste more time throughout my day on the Slack app. And my wife gets so mad if she's holding my phone. The notifications are just constant coming. She's like, "What are you guys talking about here? Just take your phone back." So definitely head over and become a premium member. And I look forward to meeting and chatting all of you in the Slack channel, because it's just a great community that we built there. While we've been on the show, Chip had put it out there on the chat. But if you're listening live, Adam Gase was just hired as the new Jets head coach. Adam Schefter is reporting from ESPN. Interesting hire. I haven't seen much of that coming out as the guy. We'd seen a lot of McCarthy to the Jets. He was only going to take that job. So they choose Gase to develop Sam Darnold moving into the future. Do you have any thoughts on that here before we wrap up the show?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really exciting news. I am really, really happy that the New York Jets hired Adam Gase. That's the best news I've heard today. That made my day.
Yeah, I don't hate Gase. I think he might fall into that category of guys you were talking about in the Slack channel today, about guys that are maybe good coordinators and not very good as head coaches.
I agree. He is a good football mind. He is an intelligent guy.
I think he falls into that category. I don't know how much of his downfall was Ryan Tannehill and ownership's just wanted Ryan Tannehill to succeed so bad as a quarterback in the league. I don't know how much of his downfall in Miami was because of that. Also, he did inherit some odd roster parts. They had Sue. They brought in, well, he was part of what brought in Mario Williams, but the roster there just never seemed to fit what he was really trying to do. So we'll see if he can turn it around with the Jets. There's some good pieces in New York, and obviously they're going to be competing with the Bills in free agency and the draft. That those teams are set up pretty similarly here for 2019 run as far as what they've got and what they're looking for go. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but they now have a coach, and so there's that. Greg, where can the people find you and scroll through your options of sweaters for the next episode?
I am always here for it is sweater season. You will see many more. But you can find me on the Twitter machine at Greg Thompson, GregTompsett. Love to follow back Bills fans. Have a good time. Really enjoy being able to kind of get into it here and there. And it's been a great experience so far.
Yeah, and you can find me at Aaron Quinn 716. And if you can't, I don't want to spell it out for you. If you can't find me, then you shouldn't follow me in the first place. No, come follow me. I'm having a lot of fun on Twitter, interacting with everyone that I can. Always got some hot takes there for you to really beat me up on, and you can come beat me up on the show as well. So definitely follow us. Follow everywhere that you can on Cover One. Go search it on Instagram, Facebook, obviously Twitter, YouTube. When you're on YouTube, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the like button. That really keeps us going, keeps the everything going up for the show. And make sure that you head over to iTunes or wherever it is you get your podcast from and subscribe to the podcast. That really helps us a ton, and it helps new people find the podcast. So if you really like the podcast and what we're doing here, make sure that you do that. And while you're there, leave us a review. That helps a lot too. It really helps other Bills fans that are searching for something to listen to while they're bored at work or whatever it is on their drive home. It helps them to find us in the plethora of podcasts that there are about sports. So make sure you do that for us because we couldn't do the show without you guys. We really appreciate you very much. And I look forward to all the new members that are coming into the Slack channel, talking with you guys and interacting with you guys. And if not, we will see you back here next week. Same time, same place, maybe a different place for Greg. He's traveling around a lot. He might be
I hopefully back in my man cave. Hopefully back. I like to have the Bills paraphernalia all around me. It makes me feel more informed
in the
of
zone.
What's going on. So hopefully back in my.
All right. Until then, guys, thank you so much for coming out, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, everybody.